Hey everyone, Andrew here, bringing you another video review, and today we're going to be doing Batman versus the Undead. Take a look at this comic cover right here. Now, Batman versus the Undead is part of the Batman Confidential series. In addition to that, this is also the sequel to Superman and Batman versus Vampire and Werewolves, which is a really long title. Now, I was very hesitant in picking up Batman vs. the Undead because I've heard nothing but negative things about Superman and Batman versus Vampires and Werewolves. I mean, just the title itself screams out horrible story. And I was quite surprised to see that DC would even give them a chance to make a story that is a sequel or a spiritual sequel. It just baffles me a bit. I mean, it was a horrible story to begin with. Why would you make a sequel? Well, I picked up the comic anyways. Why? Two reasons. One is that I enjoy the Confidential series, so I thought I'd at least give it a chance. Maybe it might prove me wrong. Two is I'm hopelessly a Batman fan, so I'm going to pick up Batman no matter what. So with that said, will Batman vs. the Undead be as horrible and atrocious as its predecessor? Or will it surprise me and you and turn out to be a decent story and not suck total ass? Well, let's get into the story itself and see. There's one thing that you have to know is many of the characters that we used in Superman, Batman versus Vampire and Werewolves were used in this. The main villain, some of the vampires and werewolves show up, and I didn't read the previous title. Any information I had from Superman and Batman versus Vampire and Werewolves were from reviews or from what I've seen of people talking about it. However, you really don't need to know these characters going into the story, which I guess is a good thing. You can kind of piece together what happened or who they are or anything like that. It would have been nice if they did give you a brief recap, but you don't really need it. The story starts off with a psychotic professor being released from Arkham Asylum. I believe his name is Professor Combs. And he loves death. I mean, more than a necromancer. And he pretty much could be a necromancer because he loves raising the dead. Exactly what his overall maniacal plan is in the story, I didn't really pick up. But it's just to raise the dead, do some rituals, and stuff like that. But he needs a vampire for this big, huge spell. And one of the vampires that Batman and Superman worked with in the previous title is hunting down this professor. Eventually he comes into contact with Batman, and Batman and him team up. Eventually down the line, Superman joins in with them along with the werewolves, and it's just basically the four of them versus massive hordes of undead. Oh, and Dr. Fate shows up for about 2 panels. And that's it. And that's the basic concept of the story. It's very simple, very straight to the point. Batman, Superman, a vampire, and a werewolf versus hordes of undead. Okay, let's get into the good, the bad, and whether or not you should get it. Good. Well, one thing I can give this comic is I really enjoyed how the undead were portrayed here. There was at one point they were in a museum, and in the museum they had sculptures using, the muscles or the nervous system or various other body parts of the human anatomy, and these eventually got reanimated, and they were kind of cool looking zombies. And then the fight scenes weren't that bad. They weren't spectacular, but they were more on the side of good. I mean, it's kind of cool to see Batman just let loose and beat the shit out of the zombies. That's it. Bad. The story, there is none. I don't really know what the bad guy is trying to do. Is it raise the dead? Is it cause a ritual, make himself all-powerful? It's not really clear. Sure, it was stated and I just didn't pick up on it, but that attributes to the fact that I just don't care that much about the story. So, that's kind of a downfall for it. That there is really no story. 2 is the bad guy is just, I've seen him many times in different forms. He's a psychotic professor doing something crazy. It just happens to be raising the dead here. And it really isn't that impressive. 3 is, I really dislike the fact that they used characters from the previous book. They even brought Superman in. It would better if this was just Batman. I mean, if you're gonna make a spiritual sequel or a direct sequel of the Superman Batman versus vampires and werewolves, make it Superman Batman versus vampires and werewolves 2. Don't make it Batman versus the undead, because this isn't Batman versus the undead. This is Batman, a Superman, a vampire, and a werewolf versus the undead. So it's a little misleading. In addition to that, where this belongs in continuity baffles me. I mean, really does. You can't tell based off the costume Batman's wearing, because it actually looks like Dick Grayson's costume, especially the belt. You can't tell by any of the events going on. I mean, even Dr. Fate, you can't tell which one is which. I mean, there's been like millions of Dr. Fates. So where this belongs is very debatable. I'm just going to put it right after Batman and the Bat and the Beast. Keep it in line with the rest of the Confidential series, but it would have been better if they just let us know where this belonged, or at least dropped a few hints. I think the Confidential series is starting to get lazy when it comes down to continuity, although I have said that before multiple times. Whether or not you should get it, no. Were you really expecting me to recommend this? Seriously? This was atrocious. It wasn't as bad as its predecessor. It was a little bit better. It had maybe one or two highlights, but it really wasn't anything worth picking up. It was just boring, and this is one of the few Batman books that I've read that I've just like fallen asleep reading. I was like this. It was just that bad. You know, avoid Batman versus the Undead. I don't know why they tried to make a sequel of this, but they really shouldn't have. It's only $12. Well, actually, it's get this, it's $15. But I got mine for $12 because I think my comic book guy knew this would suck, so he took a few dollars off. Although he takes a few dollars off anyways off my comics. So, but Batman vs. the Undead, final verdict: it can go suck major balls, because this is exactly what it does: suck major balls. Don't pick it up. This is Andrew saying peace out for now.